Hello, everybody, and welcome back to a new episode of El Koki Otaku. Tonight, our special guest with many lovely characters from great series such as Sayaka Taniyama in Alya sometimes hides her feelings in Russia, Hime in The Tale of the Wedding Rings, Karen Nora in Date a Leaf, Mizuki in Philon's Game, and one very interesting character, the walking jellyfish in Fairy Tale 100-Year Quest. Tonight, we welcome Izzi Raine. Izzi, thank you so much.
Hello. Yes, thank you so much for having me on. Oh, we're going out of focus. There we are. We're back. Okay, it like blinked for a second. There we go. All right. Hi there. I'm Izzi Raine. I am a voice actress. I've voiced all of those lovely characters and then gotten to lend my voice to a couple other shows as well. I've been acting since I was 4, and then now I'm a voice actor. We may get into the history of that later on, but yeah, thank you so much for having me on, and yeah, let's get right into it.
Yeah, thanks to you, honestly. And let's kick it up already. Let's do one of the latest big hit in the anime industry, talking about Alya sometimes hide her feelings in Russian. Long titles. Well, you're the character of Sayaka Taniyama, which was the final big arc in the series. For those who still haven't seen this series, and I know the name almost spells what it's about, but how do you describe this series?
So this show, it's a romance, very much rom-com, about Alya, who knows Russian, and then Masachika, who also knows Russian, but she doesn't know that he knows Russian. And then she'll sometimes say things in Russian and reveal her feelings. But he understands it. She doesn't know that he understands it. And it's just that kind of crazy dynamic romance. Don't want to spoil it for you guys. But then as this is all happening, they're trying to get into the student council. This girl named Sayaka comes along, who was beaten by Masachika in junior high. And then she's running again for student council. And she does not like that Alya has taken the place of Miss Yuki Suo. And she has a lot to say about that. And yeah, she has a lot to say about that.
Let's drop a spoiler. This series was released already in the spring or summer. So you guys have time to watch it. And we watch it. We want to have our fan otaku moment to fan about it and talk about what we've seen. So just take the further gun, enjoy it.
Sayaka is the type of character who has a lot to say, but then when she gets kind of put in her place and shut down, she just runs away and cries. When she doesn't get what she wants, she runs away and cries, which can be a little bit relatable. I mean, when you're playing these characters, you kind of have to draw from a little bit of personal experience. So I can relate to her goals of having like these big goals, and you have to have this happen, and you envision it all in your head, and everything in Sayaka's head is her and Nonoa that are running for student council. They're gonna win. They're gonna beat them because how dare Alya run for student council? And then that doesn't work out exactly how she wanted it to, and she's just like, well, what do I do now? And she gets to have despite kind of the looking back now that most of us watching this show are not in high school. Looking back, you're like, oh my gosh, it's just student council. But when you're that age and you're in high school and you're a freshman and this is your end all be all, this is the peak of your life, and that doesn't happen, you're it's the most devastating thing. So it kind of gave me the chance to kind of reminisce on, I miss the days when that was the biggest thing, is just the things happening at school. That was my whole world. That was my whole universe. And then dealing with that kind of disappointment and adversity and moving on and becoming stronger as a person. Just getting to kind of use my real experience and then just kind of get to kind of pop back into that was really a treat. It was really such a privilege. So I really appreciate Sean Gann, the ADR director, for Alya sometimes hides her feelings in Russian, the English dub. It was really, really great. And she was my first recurring character as well. So all of my characters that I had booked before kind of appeared for just one episode, never to be seen again, which kind of happens a lot in anime, or maybe they'll come back later on. That's kind of how it is in anime. you may have a character disappear for seasons and they may come back. So you never know. But for this in particular, this was my first time stepping into a character who provided a very major plot point in the story. So it was a little stressful. Yeah, I was a little nervous for that, but I'm really proud of what I did, and I'm excited for season 2 that is confirmed to be in production. We don't have a release date yet. We'll find out this pretty much the same time as everyone else. But just getting to step into that and get to kind of play that character who just has the audacity. That's something like just has the audacity to come up to these people and confront them and just say, I don't like this about you, and I don't like that, and how dare you. And then when they're like, oh, well, I don't like that, then she cried. It was just such a good time. It was really just such a good time, and just really great while challenging. I loved it. I needed it for my actor soul to have just like a character with a lot of depth and like a whole lot of layers to her. I just really loved that.
And Alya, it is a slice of life, very rom-com. So when we have rom-com slice of life, it's kind of hard to identify antagonist character. However, Sayaka appeared, and also the main character's sister, which I just forgot her name.
Yeah, Yuki
and Sayaka, they appeared those last episodes as the antagonists of the story arc going on. So were you expecting to play that role of the bad girl in the story at the moment?
So I talked to Sean, and I have the light novel, and I actually need to sit down and read all of it. And so I know a little bit of what will happen is Sayaka does have some character development that happens, and she's still, to my understanding, going to be a little bit of an instigator, but she is going to like kind of have that development and like learn more about the people that she's judging without, because there's a big spoiler that I don't want to spoil a season that hasn't come out yet. But she does come across information, and she just like, I don't know. It's going to be really, really fun. I'm excited for it to come out, and I'm excited to see how it's adapted and to actually like kind of see what happens and how this character reacts. Because she is just she's kind of obsessed with these people as well. She has a little bit of an obsessive relationship that almost kind of seems parasocial, where she really doesn't know these people that well, but like in her mind, she knows them. So just really diving into that of how the way she perceives these characters versus how they really are in that dynamic, is going to be really interesting. So I look forward to that.
Absolutely. And moving on to our next series, one of the series, because something is edgy doesn't mean will not have good actions or story. And this is the case of Tales of the Wedding Ring. We have a good story, good background characters, and a lot of edgy. And you had the character of Hime under your own time. So,
yes.
Okay, this is complicated. How would you describe this series of the Tales of the Wedding Ring?
So I came across it when the auditions came out. I watched kind of because I think the first episode was out in Japanese. Sometimes they're out, sometimes they're not when we get the auditions. So this one, I remember watching the first episode, and I'm like, whoa, okay. Because after the flashback, after young Hime's section in her scene, it like goes like 0 to 100, and I was like, oh, okay. So I do the audition as the adult one at like very much like waifu kind of audition. So it was very funny. I kind of chuckled. I was like, oh my gosh, I booked the young version. But it was fun getting to kind of establish this story, and then also getting to work with Lee George, the director. That was one of the shows that was, I believe, his directorial debut as an ADR director. And I think he did an absolutely fantastic job. And he's just been putting out such great work even since then. But I believe I was one of the first people that he recorded with on that show. And I remember us talking. He's like, this is my first show with him as the ADR director of the show. And I was like, this is so awesome. Like, I love this for us, because that was also my first named character. So both of us kind of had like, it was like a first time milestone moment in that. So that was really special. Getting to play a character with the name, because that whole first year that I had been contracted with the Crunchyroll, I was mainly just doing the additional voices. So townspeople, the random children, people in schools, all kinds of the characters you see in the background, which is very, very important. If you like, it would just be wrong if you didn't have the background characters. They're very much necessary. But then this was my first time like stepping in for my own session, for my own character. So that was like super, super excited for that. And then just getting to be a part of the story, and then finding out that Ezra was the older version of Hime. I was like, oh my gosh, because we're friends. So I was like, this is awesome. And then we just like, it kind of sparked an even better friendship from there, because I'm like, we kind of share a character. This is so fun. And it just kind of was a real start to kind of how things have kind of picked up with my characters, kind of learning more about what directors think of E4. And just, it was just a really good experience as well.
And a good series, guys.
Yes.
Check it out. The only advice, watch it by yourself or with 18 plus people next to you. Don't go with minors, or don't.
Not a family friendly show. Having to explain that to my parents as well, because they're like, I was like, I booked my first name character, and they're like, what show? And I'm like, get ready for this. Get ready for this. Tales of Wedding Rings. I'm the child version. But just, I'm like, beware if you watch past my scene. Viewer discretion is advised. And they're like, okay.
And how they react when they saw past your character? By the way, guys, John.
I think they only watched the first episode and they're like, interesting. We're proud of you, though. We're proud of you, but this is interesting. Interesting.
No, it's great hearing this story when our voice actor had to do a mature scene. We have some interview with characters in Spanish. They had to dub hentai. And that's a different experience.
Yeah.
Very professional conversation. Very super professional.
Yes.
And, something that really caught my attention. I don't want to deviate too much, but one of them described that she said it's more physical demanding. It's like really a map.
I bet.
And I'm like, I never put my mind.
I would not be surprised. There's like a lot of things that you go in for, like especially like Walla, and like you're sweating by the end, and you're mainly just using your voice. You're really not moving around. But I recently had a session where I'm like, whew, I'm a little bit winded after this, and it was mainly creatures. I get called in for a lot of creatures as well, which is fun. I love it. You really get to kind of use your whole range and use parts of your voice that you would absolutely never, ever use, which is the best. But it can be physically exhausting to be like demons or just like these creatures or even the jellyfish. Like, it's a lot more than you expect. And then you also, while it's physically demanding, you gotta like watch your hands. You can't put your hands in front of your face because then that'll affect the sound. But it's really interesting. And then when I was learning voice acting and I was taking classes, we were learning how to do like running and jogging effects. And it was just like the oddest thing ever. Like I was like, this is so weird. But you do it. That's what you do in the booth. Sometimes you're running away from something and you can't really have your hands in front of your face and like moving your head too much, but you still have to like vocalize like those steps that you're taking and that you're like making strides. And it's so interesting. The more that you dive into like the actual like efforts that you do, not just the lines, it's really, really interesting and really, really intriguing. And it was awesome to get to learn that kind of transitioning from doing stage acting and like content creation to voice acting. It was a whole new world for me.
I need to check if the photo still exists, but when I used to participate in plays when I was in and one time I used to keep cross my hands too much in the mouth, and the guy directing the play like, hey Onyx, stop putting your hands in the mouth. And he tired that suddenly they grabbed tape and just wrapped my hands on tape.
Oh no.
Hey, you went to act now, where are your hands? So I'm like, hey, how are you?
Yeah, it's like I can't move.
So it happened one, but Yeah, it's more complicated. Many people, many times, us the viewers underestimate or don't not underestimate. We don't see all the magic that happen behind the character.
Yeah.
Talking about character, one series involving sci-fi character and love. Talking about Date a Leaf when you have the character of Karen Nora.
Yes. So she's also a young version of another character. I am actually not super familiar with the Data Live lore, but I know it's got. I think the one that I was in was the 5th season, also with Lee George, amazing director. And that one was fun because not really because the scene was really really sad. Her house was burning down, so it wasn't fun in that respect. But I always kind of enjoy having those like cathartic scenes, and I have a lot of directors bring me in to do like crying and like if they need a character that's screaming and crying or all of the above. Sometimes they call me in. So I got to do that. I like all the cues. It was just like crying, sobbing, even more crying, sniffling.
Your character have a very special arc.
Yeah.
Your character, Karen, young character, have a very interesting part because we're talking about I think 5 seasons or maybe 6 of Data Leaf, which I watch all of them. Big fan of the series. Kind of spin off because we have the main character or main girls that they arrive. They're super powerful. They're like ghosts or something, call it like ghosts, and they create catastrophe at war. So they need to be suppressed by the main guy who by kissing them just suppress the power. But kind of weird, crazy idea, but suddenly we have magic involved, and that's when your characters come in. The character of John Karen will go to the first magician that were involved in this disaster going on. So how was that experience of bringing the magic to this series suddenly?
Well, I haven't gotten a record for that, so if we get to cover her like her whole backstory, that would be super cool. Because I don't think we didn't cover that part, so maybe there's going to be a new season. I don't know.
Well, it is part. I remember seeing it because the house burning, it used to be 3 characters, the Karen and 2 more guys, right?
Oh, yeah.
So those are the 2 magicians, the main magician of the.
Gotcha. Okay.
Karen, it is the third character who got involved because their friendship. And something happened between the 2 boys that they lost balance of their magic, and that's how Karen is the middle Gary in these 3 guys. And it is a great series. I love it, but if you ask
I need to go and watch all of it for the full story because I've heard like about like the premise of it. And I was like, that sounds really interesting. And like working in this industry, you start to have a list of like, okay, well, I got to pop in for this episode. I need to watch that. That sounds really interesting. And then it's like, oh, I have a friend that's in this. I want to watch them in that. They're amazing. I want to see their character in this. And the list just goes on and on and on and on and on. So that's one of the ones I actually need to sit down and watch. And I'm like, I want to know all the lore of what's going on. Because when you go in, they only show you what you're recording for. So basically all I did was see the house burning and then I'm like crying. Right. So I didn't really know a whole lot about what led up to that. So I need to like actually go back. And that's one that's on my list that I need to go watch. And like, I'm like, why did this all happen? Because sometimes you just don't get the chance to. And it's crazy.
But you can tell you Karen's scene, that moment was that bubble that we're like, hey, how did we end up here? And then we're like, oh, now we're connecting this moment to the lore, the whole series, and how it's going to wrap it up. I had to tell you, it was a series that when I first saw the season 1, for me it was kind of silly. The concept it was cool. You have some deep quote in the opening that was like, when they opening and they did a great job in the English dub. Opening, for example, I think episode 2 star. When a lady cried, the tears might flood the wall, and tonight we see a girl who will flood the wall with the tears, and boom, and I was like, holy cow, that was deep as hell. Very deep on there.
Well, okay, I'm like even more interested now. I have to like, because I love shows that have like all those like symbolism and like deeper meaning. Like Madoka Magica is one of my favorite shows ever for all of that. So I'm intrigued now. So that's going to go up on my list when I have time to like sit down and watch. I'm going to sit down and watch all of Data Live now.
I just got the goosebump because I'm sure I didn't say right that quote, but the first time I hear the quote, I remember being on the couch and jumping off like, wait.
Because you remember how it makes you feel, and you know, like the feeling associated with it. You're like, wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let me tell you, the season finale, the story finale, no, the whole finale episode, I didn't see with that one coming. It went super emotional. I cried with that one. It was way too sad, beautiful and sad. And I'm like, oh my God. Applause, because I didn't see that ending coming at all. But it is a great. There's a reason why it's almost 6 seasons. But talking about you now, how do you made it to this world? Because you mentioned, how do you start?
So I started acting in general when I was 4, and I was doing like on stage acting, musicals, performing, musical theater, singing, all of that, dance, all of the like live performing arts. I did that pretty much nonstop until I was about probably 15 or 16. That's when I got into broadcasting and digital media. My high school offered a kind of trade school program where you would take this course while in high school, and then at the end you get a certificate. So I kind of started putting more effort into that, and I was kind of falling out of love with theater for a whole lot of reasons. So I was getting into broadcasting, learning news anchoring. So the teleprompter, I was also learning the script writing, the directing, the pretty basic audio mixing and engineering, all the kind of roles that you would see very similar to voiceover, but it was different. But one thing that I will always remember and will stay with me to an extent is when I started news anchoring, there were a lot of people who said I had a very annoying voice and that my voice was obnoxious. Even teachers agreed with this, and it's like the older you get, and like even back then it's like, that's not very nice, but like as you get older, it's like, why were teachers saying that to a 14-year-old? But that like became a pretty deep-rooted insecurity. I just thought I talked weird and I had this weird voice and no one wanted to listen to me speak. So that kind of stuck with me. I still kind of pushed through the program because I still really liked doing it, and there was still like this part of me that was so passionate about it that I was kind of like, screw what they think, I'm gonna do it anyway. But there was still that little voice in the back of my head that's like, you have an annoying voice, your voice is annoying, people don't like you. So I kind of, the more excuses I had to step away from people listening to my voice, I took them, and I started doing content creation as well. When TikTok became popular, where I was like, oh, I could just have other people's audios and voices on top of mine, and I just lip sync it. Perfect. So I started doing that, and then eventually the pandemic happened, and I was doing content creation full time, and I also had all the time in the world to watch anime. So I was really loving it, and I was watching all English dubs. I've been watching anime my whole life, but sitting down and watching like the long running shows like Naruto, Hunter x Hunter, those are my favorites. All kinds of My Hero Academia. That was the first one that the dub really stood out to me, where I was like, they were either really pretending or they were really genuinely having just like the best time of their lives recording that. Like all the characters, and this is at the beginning of the show before it gets all dark and sad. But all first like few seasons that were out at that time, like it was like everyone is having like an absolute blast. The show's great, love the story, but the voice acting is just next level, and it just really struck me. And I was like, I miss acting. I miss acting. So I was like, what if I voice acted and did something like this? And then there's that part of me that's like, but your voice is annoying. Who would ever want to listen to you on a screen in a TV show? Who would do that? They would listen to you and be like, who is this? So I start doing more research into it and reaching out to voice actors who were just getting their start, established voice actors, pretty much whoever would answer my email. And I'd be like, hey, I've done stage acting and done news anchoring, and I have like that experience, but I kind of want to move into voice acting. How would I do that? So I got suggested all these different classes, the kind of setup I would need, all kinds of stuff. And I was posting content on social media. I'm like, wow, wouldn't that be so cool if I was a voice actor one day? That'd be fun. That'd be neat. And one day I get One Piece auditions in my email, and I was like, where did those come from? How did those get there? And at first I thought it was a scam. I was like, no way. No way. No way. I'm actually, like, this is actually from Funimation sending me an email for One Piece auditions. And I look and I see it's like from their email, and I'm like, oh, it is. I actually do. So I do the auditions, and I had never done a voiceover audition before ever. And I did all the things that when you take your very first voice acting class and they go over, like, this is how you do an audition. All the things they say, do not do that. I probably did. I probably did. And I believe at the time Anthony Bowling was directing and casting that arc. And I even asked him, I did eventually take a class with him, and I was like, do you remember my One Piece audition? And he's like, no, I don't think so. And I'm like, good. I'm glad. I'm really glad. And he's like, oh, okay. And I'm like, trust me. I did all the things they say don't do. I think at one point at the end, like where you would usually just say, Izzi Raine, reading for insert character here. I do like, thank you so much for sending me this audition. I had a really great time audition. Something like that. Something like, don't do that. Don't ever do that. But I didn't book anything. As what happens with most auditions in anything, whether it be stage, on camera, you just don't book most of the auditions you get. But it still kind of fueled this fire in me that I'm like, I need to take more classes, and I need to do this. I can do this. So I take more classes, meeting these directors, and this was kind of when remote recording was very much going away or becoming very, very limited, kind of how it is now. And they're like, well, if you actually want to do this, you're probably going to have to move to either LA or Texas. And I am not eligible to join the union at this time. So I was like, I guess I'm going to go to Texas. And I have family out in Texas. So I was like, that works better, but I'm going to need to save money. So I started spending all my time working at an indoor amusement park, booking birthday parties. And I eventually also started managing their social media. And I would just, any kind of project I could take on and however many hours I could take doing that, I just worked and worked and worked. Any of my free time, I was taking classes and just saved to move out here. And in about 10 months or so, I did it. So June of 2022 is when I moved from Arizona to Dallas. And I started taking the classes in person because that was kind of like the next thing. I was like, okay, so I need to meet these directors in person. So I started doing that. I started taking classes. The first one, I probably hadn't been in Texas for more than a week. Did one with Jason Lord, who's an ADR director. Did that, and I thought I did a pretty good job. And I was like, cool, maybe he'll remember me if he's considering a character. And did that, and I just repeated the process with as many directors that were offering classes. I was signing up, and I was taking them, and I was going to all these classes. And then about 7 or 8 months later, I get the auditions. Or, yeah, it was about 6 months, I get the auditions for their season that was coming up. And I was like, oh, I got the auditions again. This is my chance. So I record all of those, send them in, and I'm like, I hope I get something. And then a couple weeks later, I get Jason Lord has requested to call you in for the show. And I'm like, I did it! So I eventually get called in. And then that was just kind of a one-off school character in a very, very, very long titled isekai. And then I also got to be a little cat girl in another show with Jerry Jewell. And that was just like the best day ever. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I did it. That also reminds me, it took about 3 tries for me to get to the studio because this was in January when in Texas we get the ice storms. So the first time, I think they postponed my session twice. And the first time that I actually thought, I was like, okay, I'm going to go in and do it this time. So I was all nervous. I'm like, I'm going to go into the studio. I'm finally doing it. There's ice. And I fall down my stairs outside of my apartment. And I get up and I'm like sliding to my car to like get in. I'm sliding on the ice. I get in my car and I look at my phone and be like, okay, I hope I'm not late. And they say, we have to postpone your session because of the ice. So It took about I eventually made it, and I eventually got to record, and it was like the best day ever. But I have a little bruise on my leg now from falling down, or it's a scar now, but from falling down my stairs. I'm like, that's how I will always commemorate my first session professionally voice acting. But it just kind of went up from there, just getting to do more background characters and kind of one-off characters for the first year, and then that's when I booked young Hime. And then I did Karen, and then I did the nymph from Tsukimichi Moonlit Fantasy, and then I booked Sayaka, and then I booked Mizuki. So it just kind of kept going, and we're going to be wrapping on Mizuki pretty soon too, so that'll be sad. But there's a lot of really cool shows that are coming up this season, so I'm really, really excited for that. But that's kind of the journey in a nutshell.
And from those characters that you have so far, which one you consider was that inflection point that from the moment you perform the character, it changed your approach to the anime characters in the industry?
Sayaka. Absolutely Sayaka. Because that was the first time I like went in and like it was like 2 hours of recording, and it is just you, the director, and the engineer, and you're working on this character. And my first session for Sayaka was actually in a group session where and I had actually watched that was my first like introduction to the show. It was episode 2. I had seen like a clip on Twitter of the subtitled just in Japanese, and it was the like dressing room scene where she like puts on the dress and he like compliments her and she's like, oh my god, oh my god, oh my god. And I was like, oh my gosh, what is this show that I'm gonna go in for? So I do that, and I'm actually one of the people in the background of that scene that's like, ooh, so pretty. And then I get to go, we get to kind of the bit parts as well, and they're like, Sean is like, okay, well, I have this character, Sayaka. She cries, and I'm like, perfect. That's my specialty. And that's her introduction is... It's just her crying because it's a scene of her losing the student council election in junior high. So I was like, that'll be fun. Maybe she'll come back. Maybe she won't. The episode comes out and I'm watching it. And I'm watching the intro and I see a little flash of a girl with red glasses. And I'm like, wait a second. I know her. And it's Sayaka that pops up in the intro. And then it has like, and I'm like, oh my god, she's in the intro. She's gonna probably come back. And then a few weeks later, and it's probably about a month or so, then we get to the episode where Sayaka comes in and she's like not there to play. So that really changed my whole perspective, not like just going in and recording for like those long sessions and really getting to like dive deep into this character, and a character that like progresses over multiple episodes. That was like completely changed things, and for the better. But it was such an experience, but absolutely loved every bit of it, even when I was like super stressed and nervous, but it all worked out. So
nice. Moving on to not the last character, almost the last character, to one of the series that I haven't watched it yet, talking about Trillion Games, when you had character or Mizuki. What is Trillion Game?
So Trillion Game it's like a business dramedy. It has a lot of funny moments, but it's all about these two guys who have this crazy wanting to do all these like get rich quick kind of schemes, and they just want to become the richest people in the world, and they go through all these like shenanigans to do that. But then there's this bank that they have to like compete against. I know in the first episode that Haru is like trying to get a job with them, and I think he quits, but they want to like become better than this bank. And like that's the whole thing, is they're trying to like keep up. And like the main girl from the bank is like trying to buy their whole business, and they're like, no, we're gonna do it better than you. And it's like this whole thing, and then Mizuki pops up because she works with Kerouine, who's this businessman who invests in businesses, and Mizuki is like, who are these guys? You're really gonna give them money? And she's also like 15, so she's the secretary character, and she's like super serious, kind of similar attitude and demeanor as Sayaka, I've found a lot of similarities in, like, I guess the tone of voice that I use, and just kind of, they're very, like, stone cold demeanor for the most part. Don't really show, Mizuki shows more emotions than Sayaka, but pretty much, where am I going with this?
Do you see those characters, especially Mizuki? Do you see her more like the realistic character living behind the anime fantasy, or do you still have the?
She's way more realist. This whole show, she's not necessarily, like, I don't see her really. She kind of has a stereotype of just being like that, like, serious character, like, you know, like the glasses push character. That's her. But I would say that she's not super stereotypy when it comes to, like, anime. I don't know. I think, like, the reads with the show in general and, like, with Mizuki, it's a lot more grounded, for at least for my character. But where was I going with? I had a whole tangent that I was going
about the monotone when the character doesn't show feelings.
Yes, so she's very stone cold, but she's also, it has, like, a comedy side of it, because in most of the story she's 15. She's like 14 or 15, can't drive, and she's working for this, like, middle-aged man with a lot of money, and she's like the boss of him. She's like telling him what he needs to be doing, and they have a lot of really funny moments. And it's funny because the voice actor for Ketowing, Marcus Stimick, we work together. I was telling you earlier about Record You. We do voice acting lessons and directing, and they offer portable recording booths as well. But we work together, like, in real life. So then finding out that we're cast as this, like, kind of like pair of characters, that it was just, like, the funniest thing ever. I'm like, this is perfect. Absolutely perfect casting. Love it. Chef's kiss. So they just have a lot of funny moments. And then there's also 2 timelines. So there is the timeline where Mizuki is 15, and then there's the fast forward timeline where when they actually do get all that money in the end, Mizuki is older and she's only working for one of the characters. So there's this whole plot point that I'm not sure is covered in the manga yet. I haven't been able to find the manga where it covers this yet, but there's allegedly going to be a whole falling out between the characters, or there's going to be some kind of major plot point that we haven't covered yet that I'm dying to know, that I will hopefully find out, and maybe we'll get a season 2. But I'm excited for that. But it's really fun. It's just really a fun show, and it's written by the same author as Dr. Stone. So just lots of fun characters. You just have these 2 guys that just have the craziest ideas in the world, and they're just they have all these schemes that they do, and Mizuki just chimes in and gives her opinion. She has a lot of funny lines. She has one where she's talking to this, like, super rich guy who's talking about all these investments he's made and all this money he has, and she accuses him of financial harassment and says that all rich people who flaunt their wealth are financially harassing people. And I'm like, I love that. You know what? I think I'm going to adopt that into my everyday language. So she has all these funny moments where she'll just start yelling or just say, like, the most kind of funny thing, and it's just a really good show. And then it also has a Netflix J-drama adaptation, which is also really good. I need to actually finish watching that, but it's a really fun story, and we're getting to the end of season 1. We're not quite at the end. We have a couple more episodes left, but it's like the end is near.
Yeah.
So, but anyone who hasn't watched it yet, you'll get to watch all of the episodes. You can binge watch them. So that's great for y'all if you haven't seen it yet. But it'll be the end of Mizuki for now. So it's a good time. I love it. And she's had even more episodes to kind of evolve. And then with these 2 timelines, so it's given me even more experience with, like, developing a character over, like, a long period of time. And it's just so awesome. And then also working with Jason, who brought me in for the very first time. So comparing, like, my first ever time being in a booth professionally, like recording for a show, versus now, it's like so different, and it's like, look how far we've come, y'all. Look how far. It's great. So it's really, really just a great time. So yeah.
Before we move on to the last character, how do you describe the difficulty of performing in Cold Stone characters?
In it's difficult because I feel like I have a tendency to want to overdo the snarkiness. So like on Sayaka and Mizuki, these are the two characters I've really had the most time with. They say like these snarky like insults, and you want to just be like, yeah, you suck, I hate you, like you're annoying, like all the things that they say in the show, just, and you want to just go full like claws out, like, but then sometimes it hits better when you're just completely like flat faced and you're like, I don't like you, I think you're an embarrassment to this school. And you just say it completely like flat. It hits different. It's completely different. And sometimes I have to do a couple takes. We like do the first one where it's like we got all the energy, and then we're like, okay, we're gonna keep the energy, but like tone the voice down. So it takes time and it takes practice, and sometimes you gotta play around a little bit with it. But it's a lot of fun because it's like comparing it to myself when I'm like talking to people. I usually like have a lot of energy, and when I'm talking, like my pitch goes up and down and all over the place. So going into these characters, and I'm like standing there in the booth, like sometimes like hunched like this, reading the lines, where I'm just like, you're an embarrassment. It's different. It's like you completely step out of your world into this other character for a while, and it's nice, and it's really, really a great time. I've been saying that a lot. If you haven't been able to tell already, I really enjoy this. I really like doing this. But it is just such a cool thing to get to kind of step into these characters, and you like see them on the screen in front of you and just kind of get to like insert yourself into their world for a little while and get to take on their problems for a while and kind of forget whatever you're dealing with and whatever you're trying to figure out in your own personal life. And then you get to kind of leave that at the door, and then you get to step in. And my main concern is why the main character is worried about spending his shopping points when he's a trillionaire, and that's the biggest conflict of the hour. Is that so? Yeah.
And talking about world, we need to transition to the next series, which did not let us down. Talking about Fairy Tail 100 years quest after almost 10 years.
Yes.
New season, it did not let us down, and you have very interesting character, very not Cold Stone, talking about the walking jellyfish.
Yes, as soon as I found out that, because this was a Wallace session, so a Wallace session will be when you have 4 people come in and they'll do like a group of characters of you. So there's like this army of the jellyfish, so there's 4 of us in there doing it, and then we would go in one at a time and record like the specific one. So I'm the one that attacks Lucy. So I have not had the chance to sit down and watch all of Fairy Tail. I actually, when I was working at the indoor amusement park, I had a coworker. They would let us, because we sat in the back when we weren't on the phone, kind of watch whatever we want. And she would watch Fairy Tail all the time. And I like, that looks like a fun show. And I'd kind of like be watching, and I'm like, that looks fun, and it looked like a cute show, and I'm like, I need to watch that, and she's like, yeah, you do need to watch it, and we would trade like anime recommendations all the time. I loved working there, so that was the hardest part about leaving Arizona, was leaving that job, but so then finding out like 2.5 years later, I get an email, it's like, come in for Fairy Tail. I was like, what? Okay. Having no idea what I was gonna do, and it was the first episode that they were in, the very first episode. So I was like, I wonder what I'm gonna get to do. Who am I gonna get to be? And then finding out that I get to be these jellyfish, and we're like, yes. And one thing I always, when I tell this story to people, is I always tell actors when they're trying to get in, do not focus on impressions, because 99.99999% of the time you'll never use them. Because if a director is really looking for a certain voice of like a character, they will most likely just hire that voice actor. So very, very rare instances where you would need an impression. And I don't know a whole bunch of characters. I can't do a whole bunch. But I can do one. I could do a couple, but I know one that I do pretty well. And that is Toad from Mario. So I got to kind of use the Toad from Mario voice as this jellyfish. And it was just greatest thing ever. I'm like smiling ear to ear, getting to like be the little and then go. It was just like, it was a great time.
Just fun.
I said that way too. When I left, I was just beaming because I was like, this is why I do this. So the moral of the story is there is that 0.1% chance you get to do kind of an impression for a character, but it is for a jellyfish. But it's good as an actor to kind of learn your range and learn kind of like what your voice can do, because you can use those to then kind of help you when you have like a creature or a character. You can kind of pull from that. And that's kind of the only experience that I've ever kind of gotten to where I can be like, I know how to do this voice, and then you kind of get to use it. So that was fun. And then just getting to see it and all the people who have like recognized it and they're like, oh my gosh, yeah, the jellyfish. I'm like, yeah, it was the best. It was the best. And then I got to pop into the series a couple other times throughout just as like random people. And it was just so fun. I need to go and like sit down and watch all of it. But it was just,
yeah,
it's awesome. It's really awesome. I love what I do.
That's cool. Thank you so much. Any other word? I mean, you really gave words of advice for future voice actor. Any words of advice for the fans?
I would say probably the first thing that pops to mind is just, we find out things pretty much at the same time as everyone does when it comes to like a season 2 or if a character is going to come back. So any fans who are ever wondering, it's like, is my character going to come back? Your most reliable source of information is going to be the manga or whatever source material it's from. Like what I was saying, I actually have no idea what's going to happen with my character Mizuki, because I know something has to happen because there's the 2 timelines, but I don't know what happens, and I'm actually trying to find the later manga volumes where I can find that out. But like, a lot of times with a lot of these shows and the way that it's dubbed, pretty much as soon as the Japanese episode comes out, that's when we start dubbing in English. We kind of find out things at the very same time. So if you're a fan of kind of the shows that I'm in or any kind of anime in particular, and you're wondering like, oh, I wonder if that's going to get a season 2, or I wonder if this character is going to come back for season 2, like further seasons, that we're going to all find out at the same time.
Yeah.
Unless maybe producers, maybe the people way up there know who would do with like the contracting directly with the creators and everything. But actors don't know.
No.
We don't know any of that. But to know if a character comes back, find the source material, because it could be a light novel, it could be a manga, it could be a webtoon, there could be a Netflix adaptation of it as well. So always look for source material, because that's like what we do as actors when we find that we're playing a character and the show's not out yet, is we look for the source material.
Many times I get asked about season 2 or continuation. I'm like, there's no answer for that. But let's sit down and let's see how the chances are looking. And from there, hopefully I get you the answer you're looking for. So, Izzi, thank you so much. For those who haven't followed you yet, which social media can they follow you?
Yes, so it's going to be my name, Izzi Raine, IZZIRAINE. Just all of my platforms are Izzi Raine. So if you want to check that out. I have also recently signed with a convention agent, so my schedule is available. If you ever want to meet me, request your local convention to have me there, and then they can reach out to my agents. That's all on my Instagram to get in contact with me for any kind of professional conventions, anything like that. It's all on my social media. So thank you so much for having me on here. This was such a great time to get to kind of go character by character and really get to kind of dive into how it all started, and then each different experience, because they all have their own story. And then it's such a awesome to get to like go on podcasts like these and get to watch my peers talk about their journey, because everyone's is so different. Well, a lot of them have very much similarities, but everyone kind of starts at a different place, finds this field a different way. So it's really, really great for opportunities and platforms like this to exist, where we can kind of come on here and give you the tea on kind of like what happened, like how it all comes to be. Because from when you're on the outside looking in, how I was just a few years ago getting started, is I had no idea. And there weren't these podcasts, there weren't these opportunities. You kind of had to do research and like see, maybe they did a panel at a convention one time and talked about how they got in. But aside from that, finding out from directors and actors on how to actually get in was nearly impossible. So now like there's this opportunity to kind of see that and find that, and then we get to come on here and share our experiences with people who want to know, because it's like sometimes it's like, do people even care? Do people want to know how I even got into this? But people do, and I just love just talking about it, because it's having like a goal like that, something so like lofty, and then getting to achieve it is something that I wish for everyone. I hope everyone, no matter, even if it is in voice acting, even if it's not, and it's something completely unrelated, I hope everyone can kind of have a goal of something that fulfills them and makes them like they're so happy and get to achieve that. So that's kind of my final thoughts on everything. So thank you again so much.
No, thanks to you guys. Remember, down in the description you can find easy links to their social media, and subscribe Koki Otaku to all social media too. And that's all. Izzi, thank you so much.
Of course. Thank you so much.
And we will see you guys in the next episode. Sayonara.
Bye.